Welcome to VB's Justice. My name is Virginia Braden, and I am a licensed private investigator and behavioral analyst. I specialize in violent crimes and cold cases, and I thought with so many of us right now confined to our homes and having our activities restricted, and so many of us searching for something to do, that this would be an absolutely ideal time to post a new Kentucky cold case. And so I'm so excited to be able to bring this case to you today. I know you're going to find it interesting. More importantly, I am counting on you to share this story so that we can get justice for this victim. Before I get into everything, though, I need to warn you, there is graphic and explicit material present in this video. So please understand, this is for mature audiences only. This cold case takes us all the way back to May 6th of 1988, over 30 years ago now. It was a Friday, the Friday before Mother's Day. And the setting for this is absolutely the last place in the world you would ever expect to encounter something so horrific and something so violent. This was a rural community in Kentucky. It was Owen County, Kentucky, the city of Corinth, the kind of place where everybody knows everybody, where friends and family and neighbors watch out for each other, they take care of each other, the sort of place where everybody knows everybody's name and everybody knows everybody's business. A young couple were out for a walk on the family farm, and they looked off in the distance in a mound of grass that had grown taller than the surrounding areas, and they saw what they believed was a farm animal that had died. But as they got closer, they realized it was not a farm animal at all, and what they found was absolutely horrific. They stumbled upon the decomposing body of a female. Her body had been dumped there, and she had been left there nude except for a pair of men's dress socks. Now, these dress socks were dark brown to black in color, but the portion of the socks that went over the toes was bright green. The socks were pulled completely up. And so this seems very intentional, and this is an important clue. And this poor young woman had decomposed to the point that she no longer had a face, and she was missing some of her limbs as well. Now, I can't imagine coming across such a horrific sight. And you can imagine what a shock this would have been to this young couple, and in fact to the entire community. And this poor woman had been tossed aside like a piece of trash, left completely exposed, and just an absolutely horrific thing for anyone to come across, but especially puzzling when we take into account the setting for this. Now, even though she was found nude except for the men's dress socks, investigators did find other clothing items near the body in the field, and they recovered a brown nylon blouse, a pair of blue jeans, a pair of men's white sneakers that were Winner's Choice brand, size 5.5, and they also recovered a blue bra. So those are some items that are assumed to have belonged to the victim and could potentially be important in being able to identify her. When I first scheduled to do this case, I was hoping to go down to the farm where she was found and actually take an in-person tour and film the parcel of land where she was found. And of course, with all of the craziness that's been going on, and travel was not possible, but I was able to speak with some family members that own the farm where she was found. And so you're going to get to see here a virtual tour of the area where she was found, and there's some very interesting details as you're going to see. Even though this was a rural community, it was not risk-free for her killer to have put the body where he put it. Take a look. Rodney, thank you so much for agreeing to be our virtual crime scene guide here today. You know, I'd hoped to be there in person with you, of course, but all of this has really just put everything into a little bit of a chaos. So I'm really glad, though, that we are able to do it this way, and so thankful for you. I don't think there's any substitute for actually going to the scene of the crime. This was your family's land. Well, it still is. The land belongs to your family. She was discovered May 6, 1988. So go ahead and spin your phone around and kind of walk us through what this would have looked like back in 1988.
Okay, back in 1988, the fence that you see here now and the trees that you would see along this roadside right now for about 100 yards, they were not there.
Okay.
There was a driveway right here where I'm standing at that time.
Okay.
That led up to where there was previously a residence that had burnt to the ground. So the residence wasn't there either. So it was just a driveway.
Was that driveway paved?
No, it was gravel.
Okay, but you've got that paved road right there. And
yes.
So and this is, we said, 4 miles. This location is about 4 miles west of exit 144, right?
Yeah,
off 75.
3 miles west.
Wow.
3 miles west of exit 144 off of Interstate 75.
And even though this is a rural area, you said that everybody knows each other in this particular area. So talk to me about how risky it would be for someone to, pull up here with no fence, no trees. There's the road there, and unload a victim. This is just, to me, just seems so brazen and so bold.
Indeed.
And this is a tight-knit community, correct?
Yes, actually, everyone probably within about a mile radius of where I stand right now is a relative of mine, to a certain extent.
Right.
A cousin, maybe going back to like a third or fourth cousin, but still, it's a tight-knit family. We've known each other all of our lives. So, yeah, absolutely a brazen act indeed, because if indeed it would have been seen,
right,
it would have been
There's no explanation. Right. Can you spin the phone around a little bit? Now, you said, and I know this is what was in the news report, so I'm going to ask you, and it was your cousin that found her, correct? Your cousin Joy?
Yes.
Okay.
Joy, yes.
And you said your father had thought, well, she had been left in some higher weeds, right? So it's sort of camouflaged. Is that how it worked? It kind of camouflaged her body?
Correct. The body was found about 30 feet up from the road. And
okay.
As you can see, there's a little bit of an incline
right
here. And the weeds at that time were pretty high.
Okay.
It was an uncut lot. So,
yeah.
Unfortunately, we have a large deer population here. And like I said, unfortunately, those deer are often struck by a vehicle.
Uh-huh.
And, it's not uncommon to see them on the side of the road.
Right.
So that's exactly what my dad, who, if I spin this around, you can see that house into the distance.
Uh-huh.
That's probably a distance of about, I would say, 2,000 feet maybe.
Okay.
So, he would see it,
right,
but he didn't know. He just thought it was a deer, because like that was such a common occurrence.
Yes, and that seems completely reasonable out there where you guys are. Well, thank you so much, Rodney, for walking us through that. If you'll spin around one more time and let me see that paved road. And again, that was there in 1988, so this would be something someone could take a vehicle on, and then an unpaved driveway that might facilitate him getting a little way off the road. But again, as you can see, open, flat land, so if anybody were to come by at all, they certainly would have a question about why there was a vehicle up there, and they certainly risked being discovered there. So helpful, Rodney. Thank you so very much for doing this. And I know we've talked about and discussed before, your family really was impacted by this. Your father couldn't wrap his mind around someone's daughter being taken that way. We've talked, you and I previously, about just the lack of dignity and lack of respect for this poor woman. And I know you all have a very strong faith, and you've been actually praying that the answers would come in this case. Really hopeful that, especially during this time right now, we've got so many people that are quarantined and looking for something to watch. I'm really hopeful we can get this in front of the right people. And so thank you so much for giving us your time today and being our virtual crime scene tour guide. Thank you, Rodney. So as you've just seen, that is a very interesting scene there with that road that is fairly frequently traveled by people there in that community. So this was not completely risk-free, although the step was taken to put her in that patch of higher grass. Now, I was also able to talk to Rodney's sister, Lanny, and she remarked upon how much this had really impacted their entire family. And that's something I think that people really may not understand, is that the impact of violence goes far beyond what happens to the victim, and it really does impact and affect other people. And in this particular case, it impacted complete strangers who just had the unfortunate situation of having this poor woman meet her death and then be disposed there on their property. Take a listen to what Lanny has to say. Hi, Laney.
Hi, Virginia. Can you see me?
I can see you just fine.
I can't hear. Hang on just a second.
Sure, yes.
Rodney's got our audio.
Ha.
That's it. Okay, can you hear me now?
I can. Can you hear me? You hear me? Okay, fantastic. All right. Laney, thank you so very much. I appreciate you doing this, and I know that we have spoken previously before this recording about how much this event has really impacted your family. And I wondered if you would have a few words to say about what it has been like for you and your family when this event happened. I mean, it's certainly not the normal thing. It must have seemed like it came out of a movie almost to have her discovered there on your land. So talk to me about how that impacted you and your father and the rest of your family.
Okay. When we found out about it, I was actually at my father's home. And, obviously it was a shock. This is a very quiet, you don't hear anything like that ever.
Right.
It's a huge shock.
Yeah.
And to hear about the condition that she was in,
right.
It was unbelievable. We couldn't imagine.
Yeah.
It was very hard for my dad.
Mm-hmm.
He raised daughters, and he loved children.
Sure.
And just couldn't imagine what her family was going through. None of us could.
Yeah.
And with no wonder, always wondering what happened, what led up to that,
Right.
no answer. And it always bothered my dad, especially because he was always concerned that her family members knew what happened.
Right.
And they had no way of finding out. I mean, this has gone on for so many years,
Yeah.
And it was just to have something like that happen so close by. I mean, literally almost in your front yard.
Yes, I know. I can't even wrap my mind around what that would have felt like, And I feel like from what you've told me about your father and the rest of you almost felt like responsible to this poor woman to try to figure this out, and to bring her back to her family. It's heartbreaking, and I think sometimes people don't really understand the impact of knowing someone has met their end, through violent means at the hand of another is a truly horrific thing. But to have it, like you said, just put it pretty much in your front yard, just is absolutely heartbreaking. And I talked with your brother Rodney, was kind enough to give us a virtual tour guide of the crime scene there in that farmland. And he talked about how everybody knows everybody, and there's just this kind of thing is just, it's not like a big city, right? So it's not, this kind of thing just isn't,
Community.
Right.
We all grew up around here, like you said, everyone knew everyone. Neighbor always reaching out to neighbor, and to have something like that happen, it's just devastating in so many ways,
Right.
And every time, we drive past there, which we have to drive past there all the time, can't help but, bring that to remembrance,
Right.
The horror that poor lady must have endured,
Right.
I just can't imagine.
Right. And it's so striking too. Left with no dignity. He didn't even cover her. Just really disposed of her so callously and so calculating. And so you have to also think that this person is out walking around is just an awful thought.
Right. And that, I think, bothered Dad so much. That could have been one of his.
Right. Yes.
He was so child.
Yes. Yes, she certainly was.
It just, it's hard to wrap your mind around it. It really is.
And this happened. This was May 6, 1988. Yeah. And to see that it has stuck with you all these years, and you all have continued to think of her. And what just struck me most about what you said is, bring that to remembrance. And I do think that matters. I think it matters that you've kept her in your thoughts, and you all have kept her in your prayers. And I am hopeful, right along with you, that this episode can get her face in front of the people who love and miss her, and that we can finally see those prayers answered. Thank you so much, Lainey. I appreciate your time. Thank you for being so flexible with this. I love that we're able to do this. I wish I was there to meet you in person, but I'm so thankful that we're able to do it this way. Thank you. God bless you both. Thank you. The coroner in this case determined that the young woman had been strangled and then left in the field for days. And this was May, so you can imagine what the warmer temperatures and the wildlife activity there would have done to the condition of her body. The coroner also discovered evidence that she had given birth. So this is somebody's mother. Her physical characteristics were that she would have been between 25 and 40 years of age. She would have been about 5 foot tall. She would have been around 120 pounds. The color of her hair was dark brown and black with gray mixed in. The body of this poor woman would yield 3 additional clues. First, there was a very crudely crafted, in fact, probably a handmade tattoo with the name Steve. And second, even though parts of her hand were missing, investigators were able to get fingerprints. Investigators were also able to collect hair from the victim. The investigator in charge of this case is hopeful that new advances in DNA will lead to her identity. The detective in charge of this case is Detective Johnson of the Kentucky State Police, and he's at Post 5. And I spoke with him on the phone about this case, and he is highly motivated to solve it. He is absolutely convinced that someone somewhere is missing a mother, a sister, a daughter, and that if there is a way to get this information in front of just exactly the right person, this case is going to be solved, or at least her identity, which is the very first step in figuring out who is responsible for killing this poor young woman and dumping her body on that farm in Owen County, Kentucky. Now, recently, the Kentucky State Police got a little bit of help from the Texas Rangers and a very specialized unit called the Evidential Art and Facial Identification Unit. And they were able to come up with a brand new composite drawing. I want you to take a look at this. Now, this will not be necessarily exactly what she would have looked like, but it should bear a strong resemblance. And people that knew her would be able to look at that and see the resemblance and see the similarity. So please take a look at this. This is a brand new updated composite sketch. And as a matter of fact, this has been released just since the beginning of this year. So this is a new clue for this case. Additionally, the Kentucky State Police now believe that this woman may have connections to Columbus, Ohio, and perhaps also Miami, Florida. So those are 2 additional things that are very important to note. New composite sketch and possible links to the Columbus, Ohio area and Miami, Florida. As I was researching this case, I was struck by some similarities in a case that is connected to Samuel Little. Now, he is been called the most prolific serial killer in U.S. history by the FBI. He has confessed to killing over 90 different individuals, and the FBI have been able to confirm over 60 of those at this point. Now, I want to be very clear, this is my own speculation here. This is completely and totally my own thoughts on this and just some questions, and so I thought it'd be worth bringing it up here. Samuel Little, earlier this year I posted on Instagram, Samuel Little had talked about a woman that he had met and was driving from Lorain to Cincinnati with, headed down into Kentucky. He says he pulled off Interstate 75 and that he strangled this young woman and left her in an area that had a little bit of a mound, a little bit of a hill to it. Now, there are some things that don't match up, so I want to just kind of walk through this for a minute. Originally, he said that this was Covington, Kentucky, where her body was found, and of course, we know that this young woman for this case was found in Corinth, Kentucky. However, they both begin with a C. They're both in Kentucky. Is it possible he just got the name wrong or didn't remember? And here's the thing. The FBI has said he's been very detailed in his confessions and even drawing sketches of his victims and providing a lot of items that are highly detailed. But what we don't know is, out of these 90 that he's confessed to, how often has he had a detail here and there wrong? How often has he been off on the date? How often have there been things that didn't quite exactly match up? And so that's why I'm going to kind of walk through this with you today. And again, purely my own speculation on this. He says that he left Lorain, Ohio, which the investigators for the case now believe she may have a link to Columbus, Ohio. And though Lorain and Columbus are obviously not the same city, they are not very far apart, still in the same region of Ohio. Traveling down 75 matches up to where we know this particular Jane Doe was found, because as we heard in the virtual crime scene tour, this particular location is about 3 miles west of that exit 144 off of 75. So that matches up. The dates are off, however. Samuel Little recalls this being 1984. Of course, this Corinth victim was discovered in 1988 and had only been dead for a few days. So, but could he have got that wrong? He says he strangled her, and the coroner in this case believed that the victim found in Corinth, Kentucky had been strangled. He also talks about going up a small mound, a small hill, and leaving her, discarding her body there. And as we heard in the interview earlier, that also matches up. His description of her height is not accurate. He's had heard about 5'6", 5'7". This particular woman was 5 foot. Again, we don't know. The FBI has not made this known, or how many times there are details that are maybe wrong or he misremembers, even though we do know he's been very, very accurate. But I thought there were enough similarities there that it was worth talking about. And most striking to me, he declares that he was taking her to Miami, Florida at her request to see her mother. And so there we have the Florida connection, the Miami, Florida connection as well. So, you know, what's most important here is that we identify this young woman and that we get her name back and her history back. And from that, it is very, so much more likely that we will find and know and be able to apprehend her killer and bring her killer to justice. It has now been over 30 years since this poor woman was discovered, murdered, and left like a piece of trash, discarded on the farm in Corinth, Kentucky. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for justice for this victim, and I am asking you to step up and share this video. With so many of us right now quarantined, our activities are limited, we are looking for something to do, and many of us are watching things we would normally not have the opportunity to. I believe this provides a prime opportunity to get this information out there. And I want to tell you, this is personal for me. Every Jane Doe case is personal for me. Many of you know that I was a kidnapped rape victim at 18 years of age. That event occurred in a wooded field very much like the one this young woman was found in. I did not believe I would make it out of that night. I fought as hard as I could against my attacker, and I had no impact on him whatsoever. I believed my life was coming to an end that night. I did not think I would be alive to watch the sun come up. And in a really weird way, I kind of just came to peace with that. I sort of just accepted my life was ending. This was it for me at 18 years of age. But what I could not wrap my mind around was the fact that I would not be able to speak, that I would not be able to tell what had happened. Now, I made it through. I am in front of you today with a voice. This young woman did not. She did not make it out of her dark night. And I am asking you to be her voice. She deserved better. Her life mattered. She mattered. It's time for her to get her name back. It is time for her to get her history back. It is time for her to go home to her family and for them to have the answers that they need. And I am asking you to step up and share this video. Let's get her face out in front of as many people as we can. Share this with friends and family. Post it everywhere you can think of. It is time for justice.